Wow. What a great video I just watched. Oh, hey. Hey, drinkers. Nightmare here. And what we're basically doing is reacting to a channel called ETU Stories. If you don't know what they are, they animate stories based on comics. As in, I'm not gonna show that. As in an example, like this. My rich cousins are crying. Shame on me. That's the title that a subscriber made, who I do not know who. But basically, they make the animation based on your comment, and then you should subscribe to them. Also, you should subscribe to me. I might talk a lot. Don't mind that. But, yeah. Let's get to the video.
Splish, splash! The tides of the oceans hit the sides of the boat. This was my first time on one of these speedboats, and by the looks of it, it would also be my last. Guys, can we please slow down? I think I'm getting Before I could finish my statement, I had to throw up into a bucket. I loved the ocean. The only problem was my motion sickness.
I love the ocean! Vomits at a bucket.
Ah, well, why don't you go inside and take a nap? Anna suggested. Yes, good idea.
I think that's a bad idea. Because I heard that even if you're in bed, you can still vomit. That means you could technically drown in your own vomit. So I don't think I'd advise that.
I replied. I went down the deck and took a deep slumber. I dreamt that I was in the middle of the ocean on a wooden raft. I panicked because I was the only one on the raft, and my cousins were nowhere to be found. Suddenly, the sky turned gloomy and covered with clouds. The tides of the sea started to shake my small raft back and forth. Strong winds made me lose my balance, and I fell into the water. Before I knew it, I was in the middle of a storm. Rain, wind, and even thunder. The waves were the size of mountains, and the worst was that I didn't know how to swim. I struggled to keep my head above water, but it was no use. Crash! A loud sound woke me up from my nightmare. What? Where am I? Oh.
You're still on your boat, idiot.
Right, it was all just a dream, I told myself as I wiped the sweat from my forehead. That was truly one scary nightmare. Luckily, none of it was true. Or so I hope. As I got up from the bed, I noticed that the boat was no longer swaying back and forth.
Oh.
Huh? We must have hit land.
Explains why your head is not.
But last time I checked, finding land didn't make your boat stay on a permanent 45-degree tilt. What was going on?
Okay, nerd.
I struggled to reach the surface and see what was causing the tilt. And to my surprise, we were indeed out of the ocean. As a matter of fact, we were several meters away from it. Oh, look! Anthony's finally awake, pointed Annie. Dang it, Anna! Who taught you to park a boat? I jokingly asked. As my eyes adjusted to the bright rays of the sun, my nose...
Does the boat even have an anchor? Maybe that's why she parked her boat in the sand. You should have checked around the boat to see if there's an anchor or not. Think before you say. Is that blood?
nose started to bleed.
Oh my god!
I asked why they were all in swimsuits. Anna, Amy, Annie were the names of my 3 hot cousins. Anna was a couple of years older than me. Amy and I were the same age. The youngest was Annie, who was just a couple of months younger than Amy. Embarrassed that I saw her in her swimsuit, she threw a bottle of sunscreen to my head. Bonk! I fell off the boat and into the hot, grainy sand. Amy, being the more kind-hearted out of the 3, quickly went to my aid. Anthony, are you okay?
She's not wearing the sexy. She's not wearing that swimsuit. You shouldn't be embarrassed. It's like, I don't know, wearing 2 shorts. Oh, damn it.
Yep. Amy was always kind and sweet towards me. Almost the complete opposite of Annie. The oldest Anna was a whole different story. She wouldn't bully me like Annie, but she instead would tease me. As a matter of fact, Anna was the only one that gave me the nickname Tony. You can imagine what
Tony!
Anna was by the way she talked to me. Naughty.
Of all names!
I'll have to punish.
Of all names you could have picked, Tony? How does Tony relate to Anthony? you wanna explain, my friend?
To later. Anna winked as she teased me. This was bad. 3 hot girls and 1 guy, alone on a strange island? What could possibly go wrong? Anna explained that since I went to sleep, that taking a dip into the ocean was going to be a good idea. Unfortunately, as they were changing into their swimsuit, Annie slipped on the sunscreen bottle and pushed the lever of the boat. The boat went all crazy, and they crashed into this island. The sun was still at its highest, meaning it was around noon. Luckily for the team, I was in the Boy Scouts at age 7, so I knew a thing or two about surviving in the wild. Okay, ladies, we're going to need some food and shelter, I suggested. Who made you the boss? I do what I want. Annie stomped her foot. Okay, Anthony. Where should we start? Amy asked. I gave instructions to everyone about things they should prepare. I ordered the girls not to stray too far from the boat, and if anything were to happen to them, they should scream as loud as possible. I asked Annie to search the boat for first aid and any other stuff that we could use. Don't think for a second I'm letting you boss me around, she cried. I was already planning on searching the boat anyways, so ha! Joke's on you! I shook my head and proceeded to give out more instructions. I asked Anna if she could go look for a reliable source of water. Although we were on the beach, drinking ocean water was not the best idea.
True.
Sure, Tony dear. I'll find us some water.
Water is
she
salty,
said as she got to looking. Lastly, I asked Amy if she could help me look for some wood. Right now it was daytime, but it wasn't always going to stay like this. Nightfall would come, and we would need some source of warmth and heat. Into the jungle we went. There were so many plants and trees. It was all so green. Amy was clearly scared, but not I. I'd actually done some research on tropical islands. One can never be too prepared. Ah! Anthony, careful, snake! Anna cried, pointing. Relax, it's not even venomous. It won't bite us if we just walk around. Ah! What was that? It sounded like a monster. Amy, chill. That's just a monkey howling. Ah! What is that green thing? It's looking at both of us at the same time. Amy, please. That's just a chameleon. Although Amy was kind-hearted and sweet, she also turned out to be a big scaredy cat. After a few hours of searching, we finally found some wood and brought it back to the boat. When we got back, we found Annie sunbathing under the sun. Annie, what are you doing? I asked. Can't you see I'm getting a tan? She replied. And what about the things I asked you to get? Annie just pointed to the side of the boat. A first aid, a flare gun, and some rope. It's like she just got tired of searching and just gave up. Why did my youngest cousin have to be like this? Amy and I took the time to set up camp and organize things, when suddenly...
Check the bird again.
Sorry, that was my stomach. I skipped breakfast today, Amy stated, embarrassed. It's okay, I'm actually a bit hungry myself. Do you girls like fish? They both nodded their heads with joy. I grabbed one of the sticks and sharpened it into a spear. Time to go fishing, I said as I dipped my feet into the cold ocean water. I threw the spear over and over, but no luck. The fish were just too fast for me to hit. Here, let me show you how it's done, Annie said as she took the spear from my hand. Annie, you know how to fish? Shh! She hushed me before I could finish my question. Moments of silence passed, and none of us moved an inch. Yeah! Yeah! Annie yelled as she threw the spear into the water. I could not believe it. I was outskilled by my younger female cousin. Annie kept throwing the spear over and over, and eventually had a bucket full of fish ready to cook.
Stabbing.
I was so amazed I couldn't stop staring. What? I was just admiring your fishing skills. Lies. I bet you were checking me out the whole time.
Lies.
Bonk! She threw a fish at my face and I fell into the water. Well, At least now we had something to eat. I prepared a campfire and started to cook the fish. As I cooked, I noticed that Anna had yet to return.
Yeah, where
Where was she? Did she get lost? I asked the girls to keep cooking while I went to look for her. It was getting dark. I had to find Anna soon. I started to worry. I knew she was the oldest of the group, but nonetheless still a woman. That's when I heard it. It was singing. It sounded almost like an angel.
I wonder who it is.
I followed the soothing melody and found a waterfall. At the bottom of the waterfall was the source of the singing. Anna? What are you doing? My face quickly turned red. Tony? What are you doing here? My cousins and I used to be very close. We would play all day together. Everything from cops and robbers to play dates. We were all so very young. Our group was unbreakable. Or so we thought. One day, my uncle decided to move out of state, which meant I could no longer play with my cousins. Years passed and I slowly started to forget about them. All the good times we shared were now just memories of the past. It wasn't until last week that I got a call from them saying they would come to visit me for the summer. My heart started to race. I was so excited that after so many years I was finally going to see my cousins again. Anna, Amy, and Annie. I started to plan all the cool things we could do together. All the games we could play. I was more than ready to see them. Or so I thought. I don't know why I expected to see 3 little girls, but instead, I was greeted by 3 beautiful ladies. Hey, idiot, remember us? We're back, yelled Annie. Hello? Anthony? Amy said with shyness. Hey, Tony, how's it going? Missed us? Anna winked. No. This must be some sort of mistake. There's no way that these fine-looking ladies are the same cousins I used to play with.
No way.
It took some time to get used to my new cousins. It's been many years.
They're the same!
Decades since I
That
last
might be
saw
old, but
them. I brought Anna back to the camp, and luckily for us, the fish were already
because they
cooked.
changed their age.
We all gathered around the campfire and prepared to eat.
Doesn't mean, you know.
We ate until our tummies were full.
They're
After
not
that,
cold.
it was bedtime. The boat had some sheets, so we used them to make some sort of beds. The fire slowly started to die out, and we were all sleeping. That's when it happened. I got up to pee and accidentally slipped on the sunblock bottle. Without meaning to, I landed a kiss on Amy. Her eyes opened wide when my lips touched her. Great. Are you okay? She asked. We were both blushing. I simply nodded in embarrassment. Amy understood that it was an accident. Luckily, Anna and Annie were both sound asleep, or I'd be a dead man by now. The following day came, and we were rescued. As it turns out, the boat had a GPS tracking device, and that is how we were found and saved. Did you know there's only a 0.1% chance of having triplets? Meeting triplet girls who are also billionaires and having them fight over you? I can't even begin to compute what the odds are of that ever happening. But that's what happened to me. I'm Sam, and my story's about how these insanely rich girls competed for my attention. I was looking for something to do during winter break when a friend of mine suggested that I work at his family's ski resort for the season. Being an avid skier, and after hearing what their instructors got paid, I agreed.
Yeah, sure.
Lucas's dad was cool enough to hire me on the spot, and even offered to take me on permanently if I ever decided to go full-time as an instructor. It was on my last weekend there that I met Lily, Violet, and Ivy. I didn't know I'd made such an impression until they came up to me after class with an offer to stay at their lake house come summer break. They gave me their numbers and made me promise to keep in touch. And as my house was practically a 5-minute drive away from their scheduled holiday home, I told them that I'd see them there. When I told my friend about that interaction, he exclaimed, "The Van Den Berg girls? You got invited by the Van Den Berg triplets?" "I don't even know their last names, bro," I told him. "Well, it's not like there's a bunch of triplets just walking around everywhere," said Lucas. "Petite green hair, turquoise eyes, looking like they own every..."
Really? you overreact to triplets? They're just normal women who are rich. I get that they're rich, but you don't have to overreact to the triplets. The rich part, yeah, that makes sense, but like, triplets? Yeah, it's 1%, but like, Really? I don't know.
Everything? Sounds about right, I confirmed. Yep, you've got the eye of the richest, most infamous triplets in the country, said Lucas.
Oh.
I'm proud of you, bro. I don't even know what any of that means, but thanks, I guess.
Chill, bud.
I soon found out exactly what Lucas was saying. The girls texted
Evil.
me day in and day out. They wanted to know what I was doing. They wanted to know where I was and how my day was going. Not a second after I replied to one triplet, the next would text. It was as if they were in a race to see who was going to extract information from me the fastest. And
like,
it
"I'll
didn't
have this
end there.
heart."
Soon enough, they started pursuing to me. They asked to go on virtual dates since they liked me, and demanded that I call them every single night.
If you like them, then you would actually confess and go on an actual date, not a virtual date. Like that's evidence that you have love for him. Like virtual, that's like 50% of the time, like half of the amount of real love in a real one. But you do you, ladies. I'm not your puppeteer master.
I had to schedule their calls because they were all going to different schools in different countries.
Why?
Ivy complained that she was always getting called last. I had to come up with new, different ways to appease them. I made sure to cycle between spending time with Ivy first, then Violet, then Lily. But again, the girls weren't satisfied. They squabbled amongst themselves in our group chat, saying Ivy had disrupted the order. Violet said she was getting tired of staying up until 2 a.m. just because Ivy's time zone was way later than hers and Lily's. So I suggested that we do conference calls instead. Sounds like a straightforward, obvious solution, right?
No.
A win-win situation?
No. Bad idea. Bad idea. In COVID, yes. But if COVID was a bad idea. No. Bad idea.
Not for the girls, apparently. They talked over each other and got jealous whenever I said a single nice thing to one of them. You don't think my dress looks pretty too, Sam? Said Violet during one of our Zoom calls. I scratched my head. Yes,
it's fine. No,
yes.
Zoom call. It's fine.
I said, your dress looks really pretty too, Violet.
What a
It really
conference
brings
call.
out the color of your eyes. But what about my eyes, Sam? Whined Ivy. Aren't my eyes pretty too? They're pretty. Very pretty. Like calm waters in a tropical paradise. I exclaimed.
Their eyes are the same colors! The triplets! That means they have the same eye color, the same hair color. That means they have the same prettiness. So don't overreact over it. I'm so...
Exclaimed, racking my brain for more cringy lines in case either Lily or Violet saw fit
Agreed.
to have their
That's
eyes
cringy.
complimented too. And as if I'd cursed myself by thinking that, Lily muttered, But, what about my eyes? Your eyes are just as pretty. You're triplets. You all have the same eyes.
That's what I say!
I said before I hung up the call in annoyance. I didn't talk to any of them for a day. After I realized maybe I was a bit short on them, and that maybe I needed to extend my patience a little bit. So, I made up some excuse telling them that I'd been having problems with my internet. That eased my guilt about ignoring them. The same day, an entire crew of technicians arrived at my house and installed a 1,000 megabyte per second fiber line. Courtesy of Miss Ivy Van Den Berg,
Fiber line!
said the guy.
What the f is a fiber line? I'm not big with internet devices. The only thing I know is like the Wi-Fi router and the subscriptions. But a line? Yep. I've already forgotten what it was called, but wow.
Guy who was supervising the whole thing. I texted Ivy on our group chat immediately. Thanks for the wildly generous gesture, Ivy, I told her. But it really wasn't necessary. My internet's back on now. Yeah, but now you won't have to worry about your internet ever again. It's all on me, of course. You won't have to spend a cent. That provider is the most reliable on the market. and I have a direct line to the CEO. Any problems, and I'll sort it out for you. She wrote back. I should have just called her in private.
Don't you have to pay like a subscription for that? Because the internet, it doesn't work like you get a Wi-Fi router. You connected to that, and then bang, you're connected to the internet. No, you have to pay a subscription. It's like paying a bill. Like how you move into a house, you pay, or an apartment, you pay for water bills, electric bills, and rent bills if you're living in an apartment. That's if. And then the fourth one, or the third, is internet bills, which means if you wanna have internet, you have to pay for an internet provider. I think that's what it's called, internet provider, or you get no Wi-Fi at all. That's how it works. You buy it, you pick your internet provider, and you pay, and you bind it to an internet bill unless you switch to another one which is cheaper and better. And yeah, the cold depressing truth is that we have to pay the internet bills when we get older.
Because pretty soon, the two other girls wanted to outdo Ivy's gift. Within the hour, a massive package arrived from Violet. In it was everything I could ever need to build a computer. A custom-made computer case, RGB fans, radiators, the latest GPU, a CPU that I could never afford, a motherboard that had steel accents and RGB lighting on it, a bunch of RAM, SSDs, 6 8K monitors.
No one needs 6 monitors! How are you gonna fit that many? Stack them on top as a triple setup? Jesus. It's not like you're gonna put it on a bad table.
Power supply that was too top of the line, wireless gaming headphones, a wireless mouse, and a wireless gaming keyboard. The whole...
Wireless keyboards are bad. Bad. Why? Because wireless keyboards are way more delayed than an actual like keyboard. Unless, but like we're at the year now where we have keyboards that have the same typing speed as a regular mechanical keyboards, like the one I use.
Whole 9 yards. Hope you like my gifts too, said Violet when she called me.
Oh yeah! That wastes more power! You just made his life more worse.
Yeah, I did, Violet. It's way too much.
In the long run, though.
I told her. I don't
Agreed.
really need all of this. I have my own computer, you know? Yeah, but now you can use that one.
Yeah, but now
She
you
replied.
better one.
It's faster and newer, and the guy at the store told me you won't be able to find a better setup. Now, your call quality's sure to pick up, right? No more dropped calls? I scratched my...
They are reacting as a call!
I guess so, but are you sure you want me to keep all of this? Of course I'm sure, silly. It's a gift.
I need to be quiet.
I just want to make sure you call me first, alright? She said. But before I could answer, she'd already gone. And then, Lily's gift came. She called me as soon as it arrived. My app says the package was delivered. Did you get it? Did you get it? I panned my phone's camera. It's here, I said.
It's here.
Open it! 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 Lily rattled off. As I opened the delivery on camera by Lily's insistence, I heard her say, "See? I knew Violet was gonna forget a few things, so I got you a mirrorless camera, and you can use that as a webcam for when you call me. I also got you a pro condenser mic with all the...
Oh yeah! She forgot the microphone!
Do you see it? Do you see it? It's all here.
Stop overreacting.
You didn't have to do all this, Lily. Oh, but wait,
Small pieces.
you haven't gotten to the best part! I dug deeper into the box, and when I fished out the consoles and the most expensive phone I've ever had in my hands, Lily let out an excited trill. Yay! All yours! I got you the newest Z-Box and the TS5.
What the f-
Now we can game together. Don't you just love that?
Oh,
I
yeah.
nodded awkwardly.
We can't
I'd
use the
never
official
been
names
spoiled with so much
unless you're a
gifts from
tech
girls.
YouTuber.
On one hand, it was
Wait,
awesome.
what do you mean?
On the other,
no, you
It
get
was starting to
names.
really get to me. See, for months,
Yeah,
the
okay,
girls
yeah.
didn't let up on their little competition. It was starting to get in the way of school and my part-time jobs. And they'd fight so viciously even when I was around to hear that. So,
If they give me, I would like, alright ladies, you want my heart? You gotta give me money. You gotta give me money so I can pay my bills, get my food, and then, you know, I'm along saving up for something. You can't just argue. You don't even know if they're in debt.
one day, I just changed my number and ignored them completely. I had a few peaceful months to myself until summer break arrived.
Yeah, like, you gotta have to balance.
I was on the docks by the lake, helping my dad with his boat as we welcomed the season's new tourists when a stunning designer
Wow.
yacht anchored itself right across the water from us. A small speedboat ferried the yacht's passengers, and they docked next to my dad and I. And wouldn't you know it, it was the Van Den Berg girls. They ran to me and trapped me in a tight four-way hug. Ivy immediately began to pepper me with kisses, and as soon as Lily and Violet saw this, they kissed me too. "We were so worried," they said in unison. "We thought you'd been in an accident or something. Why didn't you call us? What happened?"
I got sick.
I lost my phone, I said. "This new SIM doesn't have any of my old numbers and stuff." "But isn't that your old phone?" said Lily. I cursed Lily's impeccable memory and attention to detail. No, this one's my brother's phone. Still don't know what happened to my one." I patted myself on the back for coming up with a decent excuse on the fly.
Is my brother's.
I saw my dad fix me
My
a suspicious
temper.
look, but I gestured for him not to say a word. "But you could have called us on Zoom. What about the computer I sent you?" asked Violet. "Got hacked," I replied.
Hacked.
"And the consoles and the new phone I sent you?" asked Lily. You could have sent me a message there." "Billy took them. Couldn't say no when he packed the whole lot to bring with him to college,"
Billy took him.
I said, using my brother again as an excuse. "Oh, my poor Sam," lamented Ivy as she hugged me even tighter. "It's all right. We'll get you new ones right away. Right, girls?" And the other two of the Van Den Berg triplets...
Oh my god. Oh my god. He accidentally manipulated them to make him their slut. Made him his slaves.
Somehow, my lame excuses worked. The girls began pulling me towards their speedboat. "We're taking you to the lake house," said Violet. She turned to my dad and
If I was me, I'm like, Violet, please. I'm trying to spend my time with my dad. I need a break.
said as she shook his hand. "You must be Mr. Weiss, yes? You wouldn't mind if we hung out with Sam for a couple of days, right?" With my eyes, I pleaded with my dad to help me. I shook my head violently as I begged for him to save me.
Help me.
"Nah, go ahead, girls," said my dad with a laugh.
Monster.
"Mr. Weiss," said Lily. "See you, Mr. Weiss," added Ivy. As the boat pulled away, my dad waved us goodbye with a massive grin on his face. The Van Den Berg Lake House was massive. The girls welcomed me and
so
sat me down
big.
and gave me a drink before they all
It's
crowded on
glass!
the couch.
And 2 hours of cardboard!
"Now," began Violet, "I've talked to our dad and..." "I talked to him first," objected Lily. "No, I did," countered Ivy.
Just get to the point!
"Fine," said Violet. "We all talked to our dad, and he's agreed that we can marry you." Hold up, what?" I exclaimed. But you have to choose one. You can only marry one of us, said Lily. I should hope so. I managed to joke through the sweat that started dripping down my face. But I can't make that choice. You're all so amazing, I lied. Ivy stood and said, and that's why we'll compete for your hand. If you marry me, I'll give you a villa as your wedding gift, interrupted Violet.
What the villa?
I'll give you a Lambo, said Ivy. I'll make you CEO of my company, offered Lily. What did I get myself into?
Title.
1 minute I was thinking I was going to have a normal summer. Now, I'm being forced to choose between one of 3 billionaire girls. What am I going to do? Who should I choose? Year-old on summer vacation.
Country.
There's never much to do at home.
What even is the country? Oh yeah, this is our next video. I got hired as a bodyguard of the 2 richest sisters in the country. What country? I guess that's a part of the title.
Except for causing trouble. Eventually, I damaged enough things around the house, so my parents decided it'd be good for me to go work with my dad. Something about seeing how the world works. I was down for that because there's nothing else to do, and for once, I could get out of the house without my parents enforcing a million rules on me.
No, that looks like a giant-ass pile of homework.
My dad works for this really rich guy who has an office in his house, which made sense because his house was basically an estate. So, we spent most of our time there. My dad attends a lot of meetings with him privately in his office, so I was left to my devices. Again, not such a great idea, because 15-year-olds don't have the best track record of keeping still. This man's house, like I said, was huge though, but my dad had been very clear. Damien, you are not to go anywhere, alright? I'll come get you when I'm done. I tried. I really did. But he left me completely alone and with nothing to do. So I decided to go on a little walk. There was so much to see. I could spend an entire day roaming around and still have something left to see.
You're an idiot, David.
I was admiring some of their huge paintings when I heard giggling from the outside. Sweet! New friends! I walked out to the pool to see 2 pretty brunettes talking and laughing loudly. I went closer to them.
2 people.
Hey, I'm Damien Rose.
Do you ever think before you go? Because you don't. Oh, never mind.
One of the girls, the taller one, smiled at me wide. Oh, you must be Mr. Rose's son. We are Jane and Rain. We're sisters. I shook hands with both of them, and they invited me to hang out with them. We stood around and talked.
Sure.
I don't think they realized I was only 15, since I most certainly don't look it.
You don't even know their age!
15,
I don't know her age!
I'm not very lean. You're fun, Damien, Rain said. We were all cracking jokes, and my words were almost flowing out of me. I was enjoying my time, and I was ready to come to work with my dad all the time. I don't know when it happened, because I went back into their house to get some snacks they had laid out in the kitchen. But when I got back, both Jane and Rain were trying to fight off a possum. They were both up on chairs and as white as a sheet of paper. Oh my god! Damien, please help us!
Oh my god, tonight!
I didn't know what to do, so I did the one thing that came to mind. I threw the bowl of nachos in my hand to the opposite side of
You look like you punched the nachos. You know like, baseballs? And how they swing. It's like swinging, but instead of the bat, it's your arm.
Where they were standing. The possum saw the food and ran to it, giving the girl space to come down. I hurried them inside and saw color return to their faces. Are you 2 okay?
We've exaggerated.
Jane didn't answer me. Instead, she hugged me. Thank you so much for saving us, Damien.
Oh my god, it's my hero.
What's going on? My father entered with his boss, Jane and Rain's daughters. Dad! Rain went to stand by her father. Damien just saved us from a possum. My dad's boss, Mr. Brown, looked at me. Thank you, Damien. He offered his hand, and I took it.
Yep.
Simon, let me know when I can interview those bodyguards for my daughters, he said, turning to my father.
Bodyguards?
Yes, Mr. Brown, my dad replied. No! Jane interrupted. "I don't want you to interview anyone. Damien can be our bodyguard." I was shocked. Didn't know how to be a bodyguard. I was only 15. Wait, he's only 15. My father tried to warn them, but Jane shook her head.
It's like,
"He's perfect.
No, it's not worth it.
He's Mr. Rose's son."
It's not worth it. All the bodyguards are boring. He's special.
"He can be trusted. We want him, Daddy." She looked at Mr. Brown, and I just knew I had scored myself a job right now.
Wow, I just had
Mr. Brown watched me from top to bottom, and then nodded.
No!
"Okay, you're hired."
I'm hired.
My dad and I looked at each other, and I just knew he was going to be mad at me for getting myself involved in all this.
No.
When we were on our way home, I thought I was going to be yelled at. But my father spoke to me very calmly. "I don't know how you managed to do that.
How?
But you have to take this very seriously.
How?
Those girls are the most important people to my boss, so you have to make sure that you don't mess this up. Now, I know bodyguard sounds like a complicated job, but all they do is go out and party. Just remember to be alert of your surroundings at all times."
No, basically, you have the permission to stalk the girls from a distance. And then anyone messes with them, you gotta go. You have every right to go a bit closer. That's what a bodyguard is. Basically, it's the right of stalking. Here goes for protection.
I nodded slowly. "So, do I just hang out with them?" "Yes, but be very careful. Don't let anyone come near them or hurt them." It all sounded very doable if I was being honest.
Okay,
When my friends and I go out, I usually am very careful, so all I had to do was be more vigilant. Next day, my father drove us to the house again, and the both of us were a little nervous. When we reached the house, Jane and Rain were there to enthusiastically greet us. "Damien, we're going shopping today," Rain told him excitedly. "Oh, good." I hoped I wasn't sounding too nervous.
Great.
But shopping sounded very manageable. We'd go to the mall, and malls are fun.
Shopping isn't meant. You can't buy anything. You would just have to pray for them to give you something. All you do is just walk. You're like her assistant, really.
Fine, right? Everyone goes to the mall without bodyguards, and they're fine. Turns out they don't shop at the mall, though. When their driver stopped at a very elite showroom, I knew we'd probably never see the inside of a mall. It was practically empty inside, and the girls were ushered in with the utmost respect. They laid out an entire table full of confectionery for us, me included. The girls put on different clothes and shoes, and all I had to do was tell them whether it suited them or not. I was getting paid for this. After going to a few more showrooms, we went to a fancy restaurant.
What's to do?
You're so funny, Damien.
What's
Jane
to
said.
do?
The conversations were great, and all I did all day was had fun. Jane and Rain were so nice, and they paid for everything. I should have gone to work with my dad sooner. At the end of the day, my dad was waiting for me so he could drive me home. "How was your first day?" "It was so great. I didn't have to do anything." My dad looked relieved, and I hoped every day would be like that. And for a few days, it was. I had a blast every day while getting paid for it. Sometimes they'd even buy a pair of shoes or a shirt for me.
You see?
It was the dream life.
You have to pray for them to
when the two were invited to a party on a boat. The party started right when the sun was going to set, and it got dark pretty quickly. The girls introduced me to so many people I almost lost track of them. I didn't even understand how there were so many people on it.
It's a
My friends
party!
and I
Of
went
course
upstairs
there's
to the
a
ladies'
people
room,
there.
Jane said, and left. Usually both the girls stuck together, so it was easier to keep track of them. But here, it seemed that the two ran in different circles. Rain hung out with her set of friends, and Jane with hers. Things got harder when Jane didn't return, even after 15 minutes. "Hey, Rain, do you mind checking in on your sister? She's in the washroom." "Oh, don't worry, Dame. It'll be fine. She's probably met some girls in there." That didn't make me feel any better. My dad had been very clear when he said that I couldn't let either of them out of my sight. "I'm just gonna go check on her, okay? You stay right there." It was a foolproof plan. I'll go to the ladies' room and wait outside for Jane and bring her back to Rain. I stood outside the ladies' room, and when Jane came out, It felt like I could breathe easy again.
Thank God.
She agreed to return to her sister, but when we got back to our spot, Rain was gone. I asked a couple of people if they knew where she was, but no one knew. I was starting to get really scared, and finally understood why the payment was so high. I told Jane to stay where she is and went off to search for Rain.
Stay.
The ship was so big and confusing, I kept ending up at the same place over and over. That's when I saw the girls that Rain was with. I ran to them and they told me they had to drop off Rain at the ship's infirmary. I ran to the infirmary, worried sick because I thought something awful had happened and that my dad was going to lose his job because of me. But my main concern was Rain. I didn't want either of them hurt. Upon entering the infirmary, I saw Rain sitting on the bed looking very sick. What happened? I left you for a few minutes. She got seasick, the nurse told me, and I sighed in relief. I thought something bad happened to you. I hugged Rain and asked the nurse if I could take her back.
Dreadful.
Once I got back, I was happy to see that Jane had listened to me. Turns out, Rain was prone to being seasick, but had forgotten to tell me. I kept both of them in my eyesight for the rest of the night, and was so relieved when we got back to the shore. The driver took us back to their place. I was spending the night there because it would be too late for me to go back home. All night, all I could think about was how stressful the whole thing was. Even the fun part after I found the girls was stressful. I didn't know whether if I wanted to continue this or not. On one hand,
you finding the girls was the fun part? Yeah, you wanna explain?
And nights like today were rare. Usually it was in odd, quiet places or with a few friends. Nothing this extravagant. But what if it was regular? I couldn't have a repeat of tonight. And nothing dangerous even happened. Sure, I'm tall and a little muscular, but I'm only 15. I don't even know anything about fighting. This entire time I went along with
Well, it's time to convince your dad to go say, hey, you need to do some karate training. Billionaires bought me. I
didn't go into business to fail, but here we are. It's been a little over a year since I opened my taco truck. Hundreds of hours poured into developing, testing, and perfecting a menu. Countless nights of lost sleep spent on worrying and running numbers, running every possible scenario in my head, preparing for every conceivable outcome. 4 years of study in the country's best culinary school, and here we are. I'm burned out, broke, and I've run my business to the ground. It was such a high seeing it thrive the first 6 months. But one day, things...
This is a tradition in every business, and I've seen it for Kitchen Nightmares. I've looked at it, and I've even watched The Greatest Showman. And what they have in common is that when their business gets successful, one day they will have no choice but to face the major downfall. It is the tradition of a business. Otherwise, you're just the perfect company, really. But like, that's the downfall. The downfall of man, I call it, I say. The downfall of man. You have to face it when you're a business, when you own a company. That company will face its major downfall, and you have no choice but to face it. So you better be prepared for the downfall, because oh boy, you're gonna be in there for a while. It's a 50-50 chance of that downfall being big. It's an 80% of the percent chances that major downfall is like big, or the major downfall is like small, which was exactly what you were intended to do. Like, you know, it's tradition. Major downfall.
It's just flipped. Was it my food? My decisions along the way? I couldn't tell what I was doing wrong, so I invited my friend
I don't know, maybe your money got stolen.
Pete over one day. I'd asked him to come to the taco truck to try out new flavors I was playing around with while I picked his brain about what might be going wrong with my business. He's not the best at advice, but his father owns the largest burger joint in town. And Pete runs it, so he must be doing something right. "Why don't you try doing the Artemis Gala, bro?" Pete asked me. "The what?" I asked Pete back. "The Artemis Gala," he repeated, as if I was a senior citizen with hearing impairment.
Artemis Gala?
You know, the thing where all the top businesswomen of the country gather to, give to charity and stuff? You've never heard of it. He probed further when the confused expression on my face didn't change. I shrugged my shoulders and handed him another taco to try. He devoured it in 2 bites and continued talking with his mouth full.
He devoured the entire thing in 2 bites?
Dude, bro, he said, bits of taco flying.
He devoured the entire thing in 2... There's a taco there. What are you talking, my friend?
Lucas, dude, bro, he said, bits of taco flying out of his mouth. They've got this, bachelor auction every year. Oh, okay, I interrupted.
It's a town fair.
First, because I needed him to stop talking while chewing and spraying me with bits of taco. And secondly, I wanted to know what he thought of my food. And I didn't see how something so tacky like a bachelor auction would have anything to do with getting my business out of the rut it was in. How was going on a date with women who are probably a decade or 2 older than me gonna help, Peter? I said. I was getting to that, said Pete, finally swallowing the last of the taco. Last year, Dylan got himself bid on by some top-shelf boss lady. Now, 100% of the auction's proceeds go to charity, of course. But that's not the only reason you could go. You could totally spin this. Not only did that boss lady take Dylan on a weekend-long date on her private yacht, she also invested in his business. Now he's rolling in dough, bro. You see what I'm trying to tell you here? Dylan? I said, surprised. Dylan, I'm gonna go into an industry I know nothing about, Dylan. Pete nodded with his eyes wide. That makes sense, actually, I said, stroking my chin. That guy will literally sell his own dog if it got him ahead. Nah, bro, you're seeing it all wrong. Dylan went on that date and spun it into a business deal. He pitched his ideas as business plans, convinced her to invest, and he got her expertise and advice to go along with all of that. Now, that stupid rotisserie chicken place is friggin' everywhere. What's more is that he's been able to put up a branch next to every branch of the biggest rotisserie company in the country. And he's getting a big chunk of their customers. Not with that slogan. Really? I exclaimed, more than a little shocked. Oh, best believe it. It's not the best, but we've been told it's good enough. Pete said it, gesturing with his hands in the air as if he saw Dylan's company tagline and marquee lights in front of him. Awful, right? I nodded in full agreement, still in shock. If Dylan can do that, there's no way you can't. Nothing wrong with your food, bro, said Pete, finally answering the question I've wanted to ask him the moment he downed his first taco.
Nothing wrong with your food?
Yeah, but...
Just because he said nothing is wrong with your food doesn't mean that he is an expert. His father might own a burger joint, but it doesn't mean he knows what food, on how good the food is or not. Right? Because he's not an expert. He's not a chef. He's the manager of the goddamn restaurant, but he's not the chef. So, just... I don't know.
Who'd bid on me? I wondered. So, that's how I found myself on a brightly lit stage, with the spotlight making sweat run down my forehead, as I heard distant murmurs coming from places I could hardly see from the glare. I adjusted myself on the bar stool, uncomfortable in the tux and bow tie that I'd rented for the fancy evening. The auctioneer started talking really fast, and when I squinted at the sun, I saw a number of paddles in the air. People were bidding. I could hardly believe my eyes. It came down to a bidding war between 2 ladies in red who sat closest to the stage.
Of course it's the ladies in red. They're the most beautiful ladies is in my experiences of of me watching certain movies. If I see something, they're probably gonna be wearing red or black. That's that.
And one lady in blue who sat alone in her own table at the back of the room.
I'm sorry.
Can I get 160? Do we have 160?
Ah!
The auctioneer to a hushed room. It seemed like everyone else was just stunned to see such a heated battle. $160,000 for Lucas Alves, announced the auctioneer, jubilant at the record-breaking amount. 165. 165, said the lady at the back of the room, just loud enough for everyone to hear. 170, counted the ladies in red. 180. 195. They volleyed each other's bids and counterbids like they were playing an exhilarating match of tennis. I have to admit, it was a bit of a rush to watch. But mostly I didn't understand why they were bidding so high. One of the ladies in red finally stood up, her paddle high in the air as she shouted, $250,000! The gavel struck.
They didn't make the hammer sound, so I'll do that hammer sound. If I can find something. You know what we'll do? Going once! Going twice! Sold for $250!
The room erupted in applause. The lady in blue disappeared, and I was handed to the two ladies in red. Tia and Raven.
Wait! They're partners? No one told me that! Oh my god.
Sat at the table for the rest of the night as the auction transitioned to jewelry and eventually ended. We exchanged numbers and made plans for the weekend. They picked me up on a chopper and took me to a private mountainside retreat where we spent the whole week exchanging ideas and huddled around a crackling bonfire, staring up at the star-studded sky and enjoying the fresh mountain air. At the end of our stay, they sat me down to hear my pitch one last time. They seemed to like what they've heard, so when they pulled out a thick stack of papers asking for 30% of my company, I signed it without a second thought. I don't know if I completely regret that decision, but I definitely should have read the fine.
I mean, you could have persuaded him and say 20%.
Brent. It was 2 weeks later when I found out what I'd gotten myself into. Rookie move. I thought, always read a piece of paper before signing.
That's right! If I was you, I would read it. I would take my time and read the contract, but I kind of get why you immediately signed it. It's the act of desperation. Like, you need it. Like, why bother then?
It turned out the girls were two separate business entities, and when they
So that means one person earns 15 and the other one earns the other half. Okay, that makes sense.
In the taco truck for 30%, it meant 30% each. So now they own a majority of my company, and that meant they could do whatever they wanted with it. And my vote was nothing at 2-1. They took absolute control of every single decision. "You're not doing anything exciting," said Raven as we crammed into my small taco truck on the first day the pencil-skirted vultures descended on my business. "There's nothing wrong with the product," added Tia. "Your cooking is beyond. But this is all wrong. You can't find delicious tacos anywhere, so what else are you bringing to the party?"
I mean, I got what they mean. You gotta bring variety, or you're probably not gonna have a successful business. Like, you need to bring variety. You gotta bring something to persuade them. You have something special, and you should buy my food. And like, you need to do some advertisement. You need some advertisement. Because that's how you get to it. You need advertisement and you'll get your prize.
There's no
I talk a lot. do I?
identity, no twist, nothing exciting, you get me?
Yeah! It needs to be mascot.
But we can't. I don't want my food to be inauthentic. I reasoned, not wanting to be another hipster chef butchering my culture's food. There's nothing inauthentic with putting your own flavor, your own story into your food, Luke, responded Raven.
What?
We've known each other 2 weeks, and she's already calling me by my nickname. Authentic tacos are amazing! Everybody knows that, Tia said, facing me and looking deep into my eyes.
Authentic?
I noticed how beautiful her amber eyes were.
What does that mean?
And when she touched my arm, I felt goosebumps. But what makes yours interesting? We could get the same satisfaction from any other authentic Mexican restaurant. You're in a category that's highly saturated, so you need to find a way to distinguish yourself. And the easiest way to do that is to infuse your personal identity into your product. Raven turned me around to face her, and this time, I was uncomfortably close to the black-haired, dark-eyed version of Tia. It was hard to believe they weren't sisters. She took my face in her hands and looked me straight in the eyes as well. Everything you need to succeed is right here, Raven encouraged me. Don't get too into your own head. Just do what you do best, and we'll take care of everything else. I wanted to disagree, but the close quarters, the sense they made, and the hypnotic quality of having 2 highly successful, beautiful ladies cramped in the back of my truck gave me no other choice. So, I went for the ride. Literally. As Raven drove the truck to locations I would have never gone, and Tia and I manned the kitchen. Your marketing's horrendous, and your online presence is non-existent. You ever heard of that place? What was it, Tia? Raven called back from the driver's seat.
That's
Roasters?
right. You need to advertise. You want attention? You need to advertise.
Said Tia. Horrible name, said Raven. Even worse tagline, I said from behind Tia, holding her in my arms and steadying her as the truck went over a bump. Dylan's rotisserie chain wasn't something I wanted to hear about at that moment. Actually, said Raven, it's a brilliant strategy. They employed self-deprecating humor. It got people chuckling to themselves, and that created a conversation. They got turned into a meme. People flocked to see what it was about, and when they had the food, they were pleasantly surprised at how good it actually was. At that moment, Raven suddenly pumped the brakes, and I was caught off guard, both by the sudden jolt and the new perspective on Dylan's business. I bumped into Tia, who fell to the floor, with me quickly following her on the way down. It was one very uncomfortable moment. One, because there I was, almost nose to nose with a woman I barely knew. And 2, because suddenly I had to confront an old friend that I misjudged. Always under-promise and over-deliver, said Tia out of nowhere.
Dylan,
her eyes looking
you
into
son of a...
cheeks all flushed. You okay back there? Shouted Raven, concerned about the still-clinging pot lids that fell onto the floor with us. I think so, I called back as I helped Tia up, my own cheeks and ears red from an embarrassing blush. That day, Tia helped me restructure my menu. Raven set up a Twitter, Insta, and TikTok page for my business.
Oh, TikTok. Ugh. I hate TikTok because that is literally the number trap. That's how you fall for the number trap. This is a thing I learned. If you get this and it gets popular, you want more. That's what you say. You want more views. And you constantly post, and they want, and you get less, and you're like, oh, so I'm gonna have to try harder. And you repeat your ass over and over and over and over again. That's what I hate about TikTok. It's a number trap. YouTube, you don't get a lot of views. But it's depending who you are, but like, basically, you're gonna be fine. You're probably not gonna fall for the number trap the most of the time. Like at first you will, but after you give it a bit of more time, you're just gonna say, oh, Yeah, I just need money. Because 40K, that equals $400. Because the only way you need to get money is that you have to get 1,000 views to receive the money. If you can't receive the money, if you don't reach 1,000 views then or above, you don't receive anything at all. So, and the amount you pay is like $3 to $5. So times 5 times 4. It's a pretty high number.
Tweeted to her millions of followers about where we were for the day. People came. There was a massive line for my new tacos. And we sold more than I ever did in the past year. I mean, if anybody was going to help me turn things around, who better to trust but a pair of girls who started their empire with nothing but their phones? I hate to admit it, but they were right. And now, my business is at an all-time high. I just got my 5th truck, and we're opening a pop-up soon. But at the back of my mind...
You can't just have trucks all the time. You need to have restaurants. Because they have to goddamn...
I'm thinking...
pray for
is this still my business? When 2 other people are...
That's right. They own 30% of the company. And that's for each person. 30 and then 30. So that means you own 40% of the company. No!
Making the decision.
Those 2 own 30% of the company each. And you own 40% of the company. You shouldn't be mad. You're gonna be fine.
For me, and they own the lion's share? I don't know what to do or how to gain control of my company again. Should I write it out and hope that they get bored? Should I wait to see if they can grow my business even more and then get lawyers involved? Or should I actually accept this new reality and consider that we can work together? My own business, picking up my usual order of chicken chow mein and scallion dumplings at the Chinese restaurant down the street, when there he was. Dressed in a cerulean tunic that had baby blue piping, leather straps running across his torso and waist, a sword and shield strapped to his back, and a ragged ponytailed blonde wig on his head. What a nerd, I thought to myself. We were cosplaying exactly the same character, down to the brown leather boot. We were cosplaying...
Wow. Look. Shirts. Pretty obvious. You gotta get
exactly the same character, down to the brown leather boots. When he turned around with his order and saw me, he was shocked for about a good 2 seconds.
He has the right one. He's wearing a white shirt. You're wearing a flat goddamn orange shirt.
With recognition.
He's like, oh,
yo!
It's an imposter.
I laughed awkwardly. Yo! I said back. Were you at the same convention? He asked, causing a lot of people to stare. I glanced around nervously, hoping no one was judging the sudden explosion of sound coming from 2 geeks who were dressed up exactly the same.
Yeah,
I was, bro. I told him. Funny we didn't bump into each other there. Chow mein? He asked, shaking his own bag of noodles at my face.
Yeah.
How'd you know? I laughed awkwardly, shooting at him with pistol hands.
Yeah, how'd you know?
I sighed my relief when the interaction finally ended.
This is what you get for wearing the same costumes!
And quickly slipped out of the restaurant, eager to escape the stares of 15 people who were probably wondering what century I was from. The moment I got out of the door, 2 ladies blocked my way. I was rummaging into my bag for a bite of dumplings, so I saw their legs blue. Before I could get a... I was baked. My eyes slowly made their way up their legs. I noticed that they were wearing skin-hugging catsuits. One in red, and the other in blue. I mentally rolled my eyes. Great. More cosplayers. Before I could get a look at their faces, my vision went black. One of them had put a bag over my head. I was about to struggle. I wanted to scream for help. But at that very moment, I found out I was one of those people who froze in life-threatening situations. The last thing I remembered hearing was the door of the Chinese restaurant swing and closed behind me, and one of the women saying, "Gotcha." I woke up in the trunk of a speeding car. We went over a speed bag, was still hit the hood. I felt ropes tying my hands behind my back, and the bag was still over my head. Whoever these girls were, they were at least thoughtful enough to cut a hole over my mouth so I could breathe. "Help!" I screamed at the top of my lungs.
They're dumb. They should have cut like a hole for your nose instead of the mouth. Because mouth says help.
I kicked wherever my feet could reach. I thrashed and screamed over the engine's constant roar. But it seemed nobody heard or cared. I no longer had a sense for time. It could have been an hour later, or 10, but we eventually slowed to a stop. I heard 2 sets of feet crunching against gravel and through the bag. I saw light filter in. "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" I kicked and screamed, hoping I'd hit either of them. "Take his legs," said one of the voices. Not a second later, I was being lowered onto the ground. The same sultry, velvety voice whispered in my ear as she grabbed me by the scruff of my tunic. "Do you feel this taser pressing against your back?" she asked. I nodded yes, trying to pull away from the poking prongs that threatened to electrocute me.
Oh.
"Struggle any more, or run," she purred, "and I will make sure you never forget what being tased feels like."
Look, you should be happy because at least you're not dead. At least you're not gonna die.
She let the gadget's threatening charge crackle for a couple of seconds to prove her point. I frantically nodded my submission. I won't run. Don't have any money. I didn't do anything wrong," I stammered. "Shut it," said the sultry, raspy voice who held the taser. She grabbed the scruff of my tunic again, instantly ripping the front and exposing my bare chest to the cold night air.
Why?
Her bare strength alone scared me to silence, but she crackled the taser again for good measure. The second lady in the blue catsuit finally finished untying my legs and helped me up. I could see her when I looked down at my feet. The bag they put over me, wide open at the bottom. She put a warm, soft finger against my trembling lips and whispered into my ear through the bag. "Shh," she said in a softer, gentler voice. "Be a good boy and come with us." Somehow, all I could do was nod my head. The lady in the red catsuit pulled on my shirt's front, further ripping it as we went up a set of stairs. I heard a lock click and a door creak open. I must have taken around 20 steps until my leg collided into a steel chair. The lady in red walked me around it and pushed me down. I jumped at the shock of cold metal against me. Even through pants, it felt freezing. "I'm just gonna secure you to the chair, all right?" the softer voice of the two said. "Who are you?" I asked, trembling. "Please, let me go." I highly doubted either of them would tell me who they were, or let me leave. So I decided to think of them by color they were wearing. At that point, Red let out a menacing laugh. "Let you go?" she cackled. "You're hilarious." To Blue, she said, "He's a funny one, isn't he?" I heard Blue chuckle and pull up a seat somewhere in front of me. "Please," I begged. "Why are you doing this? I don't know what I did." Red snapped. "Don't know what you did?" she screamed. Suddenly she was right up on me. I felt her breath against my face. It smelled like berries. "You're one nasty piece of work, aren't you? How dare you? What? Did you suddenly forget how you've screwed us over in the massive deal? You spineless piece of scum. We will never forget." Confusion took over me. I understood none of what Red was saying. "What deal?" I asked into the room, hearing my own voice echo. It sounded like the entire place was made of steel. I honestly don't know what you're talking about. I'm just a kid. What
guy.
deal are you talking about? I heard Blue push her seat back and walk over to me. I could see her boots between my legs, and she pushed up close to me and whispered,
The wrong guy.
"Just admit it, Dean. Tell us where you hid the package." "Dean?" I said almost inaudibly.
Dean?
"Dean? I'm not Dean! What package? You got the wrong guy here!" I said louder when I finally figured out what was happening. I let out a nervous laugh. "Dude,
you got
the wrong guy here. I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't know anyone called Dean. Just Just let me go, man. I promise I won't speak a word of this. I began to relax, but Red wasn't having any of it. She rushed to my side.
He's like, oh, you're a liar. Stop lying.
And took the bag off my head. The sudden brightness of the room blinded me, and I had to squint at their faces.
Uh-oh.
If I wasn't scared for my life, I would have been hitting on both of them by then. Red had long flowing black hair that ended just above the small of her back. She had intense hazel eyes that bore into mine.
Dean?
Blue definitely had the look of a sweetheart to her. Her facial features were soft, and the severity of the blonde hair she wore in a high ponytail didn't take away from the innocence on her face. She was looking at me with wide blue eyes that had a look of confusion. He's not Dean? She asked Red.
Look.
Red was not easily convinced. She looked me up and down as if trying to judge my innocence based on what I was wearing.
If I was Dean,
don't believe anything he says.
I would be wearing
He's trying to get out of the world of trouble he's in for, Red told Blue. She walked off and disappeared behind a series of industrial shelves at the far end of the room. Blue ran her hands down my blonde wig, which was miraculously still intact. Just tell us where the package is, Dean.
I'm not Dean!
Sitting on my lap.
I'm being accused of a crime I did not do!
She curled her arm around my neck and cradled my head with her hand, stroking
God.
my wig as she spoke. I'll let you go. I promise. You'll only get my partner mad if you don't tell us soon. And I promise you, you don't want to see her mad. The way Blue touched me made me feel things. I tried to snap out of those thoughts, but her neck was so close to my neck, and her scent was intoxicating. That's her not being mad? I laughed nervously.
So that's
you don't want to see me mad either, she said, slipping her warm, soft hand under my torn tunic and rubbing my shoulder. The way she was going, I was wondering if I should stick around and find out. What if I want to? I asked her. Naughty boy, she said, caressing the place where her palm hit my cheek. What are you doing? Said a commanding voice from the end of the room. Red had returned, and thankfully, with her return, the tickling stopped. I struggled to catch my breath. I was just trying to get him to talk, said Blue. He can't talk when he's too busy dying from being unable to catch breath, can he? Said Red. How many times do I have to tell you? No playing with the target. Blue backed down and returned to her seat. Sorry, jeez, she muttered under her breath.
If only
Red produced a riding crop from behind her. She slapped it threateningly against her palm. Now talk, or you're getting some of this, she said. Things suddenly got serious. I swear, I'm not Dean, I pleaded. I promise, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know anything about a package or a deal or whatever. Please.
Packages.
The look on my face must have convinced them, because Red looked at Blue, and Blue shrugged her shoulders. Red hit my thighs with the riding crop. The sound of leather slapping against me echoed across the steel room, and I closed my eyes from the searing pain. For a second, it felt good. But the potential danger set my head straight again, and something in my head clicked. The guy! I yelled. There was a guy! At the Chinese restaurant! He was dressed exactly like me. Exactly like me.
Oh, yeah.
You got the wrong guy. I told you, it's not me. You got the wrong guy. Red looked at me with confusion on her face. She tugged at my wig and it came loose, revealing the brown curls that I had. Blue gasped and stood, her hands over her mouth.
Oh my God, he's right.
Dean has red hair, she exclaimed. You've been following the wrong guy the whole day? Red erupted. The last thing I remembered was the back of Red's hand coming towards me. I woke up outside of my house, dumped into one of those bushes. I still don't know what happened that day, but I'm just glad I got out of it.
Well, we'll move on to the last. Because it's too...
Hey there, I'm Eli, and one day, a super hot scientist abducted me.
Look,
but before I tell you the rest of my story, please remember to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell icon so you can stay updated about new uploads, and to show your support for me. I didn't know taking that IQ test was gonna lead to this. When I got my results, and that piece of paper said that I had an IQ score of 162, I started getting weird calls from private numbers. At first, I thought it was just spam. The calls would always start with some odd elevator music, and then, what sounded like a recorded message would play. I did tend to frequent internet forums, and so I thought it was just from signing up to too many sites. Or maybe I clicked on some weird links, I supposed. But then, one day, when I took the time to actually listen to the whole thing, I found out that it was an invitation. An invitation to join the country's premier society for gifted people. Or so they claimed to be. Not gonna lie, I was pretty stoked. The whole thing made me feel special.
Just because you had an IQ of 162 doesn't mean that you go to the university. Because, like, how did they know? Like, if you typed in your number, then yeah, that would make sense. Or, like, your email, yeah, that would make sense. But, like, how did they know? But anyways, I need to go to the toilet.
Important, even. And speaking on behalf of total geeks like myself, who wouldn't want to be part of an elite, exclusive secret club?
Right.
So, that's how it all began. When I finally took that mysterious phone call, I followed the instructions given to me, and I answered the questionnaire as accurately as I could. At the end of the call, they gave me a temporary member number. Apparently, my application was subject to a review first. The robotic voice on the other end of the line said that I would be contacted within the next week if my application was successful. And, once accepted, they would need to invite me to one of their offices to formally induct me into the club. Then, the line clicked, and the call ended. That very same night, I received an email from them.
Okay, that's
I didn't really expect everything to happen that fast. But the reasoning they gave me were all logical. They told me that no member had ever had any score above 150. And so, everyone was pretty excited. They arranged for me to be inducted. Toot sweet. The following morning, a shiny Cadillac pulled up to our house. My mom and dad were so impressed. They didn't mind letting me go off with a bunch of strangers. but not before my dad snapped a selfie of himself in front of the fancy car. As soon as I got to their offices, a stern-looking lady greeted me at the front door. "You must be Eli," she said as she shook my hand. "I'm Minerva. I'll be handling your induction to the club today. We're very excited to have you."
Oh, it's a
"Thanks,"
school.
I said, still a bit apprehensive. "Nice to meet you. This all seems a little much, doesn't it?" I gestured to the buffet of brunch items and streamers that welcomed me at the lobby when Minerva showed me in.
What?
"Oh, not at all," said Minerva. "We're always happy to welcome new members, and especially such a high IQ member like yourself." I swear, she almost said subject. And that
She
gave me
clearly
chills.
did.
Nevertheless, I shook her unintended comment off and thought maybe she was just as nervous as I was. Minerva made me sign a bunch of paperwork. They were all requirements for getting into the club, she told me. They asked a lot about my family, my background, things I tended to like doing, even my medical history. There was a bundle of stapled paper that seemed like a contract, but I never got to read it in full as Minerva rushed me into signing it, saying that I was on a tight schedule for the morning. She said I was to meet with the board of the club, and that my tour of the facilities was already running late as it was. "We'll email you the entire contract," she said. "Don't worry about it. It's mostly non-disclosure stuff and that sort of thing, for your own safety, and the other members as well." She winked at me, and I believed her. Just as I finished dotting the I on my signature, the sliding glass doors
That's
that
a
led
signature.
further into the building hissed open. The sound reminded me of the doors you always see in sci-fi movies. Out stepped a group of men in lab coats. The most prominent of them extended his hand to me. He didn't smile. He didn't introduce himself. He just took my hand with a vice-like grip and said, "Glad to have you here, Eli." And then, he nodded at Minerva. "His paperwork is in order?" "Yes, just finished signing everything," Minerva replied. "Then, shall we proceed?" asked the tall, serious man whose name I still didn't know. Immediately, 4 of the men in lab coats seized me. There was also 2 girls who looked like they were part of security that came up from behind me. I didn't even notice them there. "Well, hey!" I exclaimed as they half-dragged, half-guided me further into the building. What's happening? What are you doing? Get off!" The tall man looked back over his shoulders, but didn't stop walking. "Just do as you're told, boy. It'll be much easier for you." It wasn't as if I had much of a choice, really. I was a scrawny kid. I couldn't fight off even one of them if I tried. Soon enough, they pushed me into an elevator. And when I saw that there were only 3 floors in the building, I contemplated the odds of me surviving that fall. I just need to land right, I thought. But no sooner had I finished my thought than the elevator began to descend. Nowhere in the elevator's console did it say that there was even a basement. But it seemed like the ride went on forever. When it finally stopped, the elevator doors opened up to a vast, underground room that looked like it was a massive laboratory. It was so cavernous, I couldn't begin to tell you where it ended. Rooms upon endless rooms, and corridors upon corridors radiated outwards from the central point, which was the lobby right outside of the elevator. And there, seated on a pristine, white leather couch, was the hottest scientist I'd ever seen. She stood the moment she saw me being brought in. And then, she kissed me on the cheek. I pushed her back.
So,
She was awfully familiar for a kidnapper,
you're
I
being
thought.
a bit suspicious.
What are you doing?
Hey,
I managed to ask.
you back off.
Why? Welcoming our most valuable subject, of course,
What?
she replied.
Subject?
Take him to Bay 3. Enclosure 626 is vacant, she said to the guards. And to me, she winked and said, We've prepared very comfortable accommodations for you. From now on, you're no longer Eli. Here, you're simply 24601. Memorize that. You're gonna need to. At that, she flipped her hair and walked away. What did I get myself into?
You...
Why was this happening to me? Why is this even allowed to happen? I should have just joined Mensa instead of some random club I've never even heard of. Why didn't I just join Mensa? I was being carried away towards a sterile open corridor and having these thoughts that something caught my eye. The whole corridor was a row of what they referred to as enclosures. And in each one, there were people. One had a really muscled up guy. Another, a small, lost-looking girl. And then, I saw him. Before the guards could stop me, I ran towards one of the enclosures and began pounding into the bulletproof glass. "Hey!" I yelled at the guy inside. "Hey! I know you! What's happening? What are they gonna do to us? Hey! I know you! Aren't you that Milton guy?" But whether it was him or not, I didn't even find out. One of the guards took out a taser, and in a second, I lost consciousness. I woke up in a bright, white padded room, exactly like the ones you see in asylums, and exactly like every other enclosure I saw in that corridor. There was nothing in there except for a bed that was built into the wall, an aluminum toilet, and a sink. There was one entrance and exit.
You go too far when you don't have the toilets.
That wall was made entirely of bulletproof glass. Only a small slit in the door allowed me to contact outside air.
It's not so true.
I presumed that's what they used for dispensing food. I didn't know what to do. How would I ever get out? What use would an IQ of 162 be in a place like this? So, I went along with anything they wanted me to do.
I mean, literally.
I thought, if I was obedient, maybe they'd be more lenient on me. And perhaps that could be my opening.
Technically.
They might even let me go. From what I could gather, the facility was owned by some bigwig who was super into human experimentation. And, on the down low, he wanted to create the perfect human being. So, he began to gather anyone who had impressive qualities. There were people who had insane metabolism, perfect looks, impregnable immune systems, and then there were people like me. People who had high IQ. It was simple enough to clone any of us. They'd already done that stuff to sheep. But to be able to take all the qualities from all different kinds of people, they were having a tough time with that. When even gene editing and CRISPR didn't work, the hot scientist came to me one day. She looked a bit sad. "I'm sorry we have to do this, but this is our last option. The boss is cracking down on our deadlines. It's either you or us." I did not like the sound of that, one bit.
What does that mean?
I tried to fight her. I tried to fight off the guards. But no amount of screaming and struggling did me any good. They dragged me into a dark corridor and pushed me into what looked like an operating room. Once inside, they strapped me into a contraption, which was like an upright hospital bed. On my head, they placed a metal cage.
Act of brutality!
I tried to move my head. Once they fastened the cage, I couldn't move an inch. Then, the scientist took out a syringe. She tested it first, and then she began to walk towards me. I screamed and thrashed against my restraints. "Help!" I yelled. "What are you doing? Help! Please! What are you doing? Please stop!" It only took a few seconds. As soon as she'd withdrawn the needle, I began to feel loopy. The world began to spin, and my eyes began to droop. But before I completely passed out, I saw her coming at me with a saw. She was about to cut my head open. There isn't much that I can remember clearly. Everything was a blur. I know that there was loud noises. I remember being taken off of that bed. I remember men dressed in suits, and I remember seeing that guy that I recognized from before. He was being taken away by what looked like a bunch of mafia guys. I remember the doors to every enclosure opening. Somehow, I made it out alive. The sedative they put into me eventually cleared, and I ran. I just ran, and no one stopped me. Hey.
Well, that's it. And I'll show you, I'll show you my one.
Hi, I'm...
There it is. My title story. My dad had a dream of becoming a trillionaire, and it became a reality. Main characters, name, Trillion, Timmy. And, yeah.